Live from our 7 Tasmania studios, your nightly news with Kim Miller begins now.
Good evening, everyone. Firefighters are still battling a bushfire at Dolphin Sands, which has twice been declared out of control. Dozens of residents forced to flee the area last night as strong winds fanned the flames. Property and vehicles have been destroyed, with many residents still facing a nervous wait.
A frightening experience for East Coast residents. These flames threatening dozens of properties at Dolphin Sands. An emergency warning issued. Anyone there forced to choose between leaving or staying.
During those first few hours of the event, it's extremely challenging getting crews up into that area.
More than 20 people forced to flee to a beach, eventually escorted by police to safety. The incident began around 6 o'clock. Despite mild temperatures, conditions and the terrain saw the blaze race across a narrow strip of land at a rapid rate.
So this was very much a wind-driven event rather than a temperature-related event.
Very flammable. That coastal heath, once it gets wind-driven, it's hard to access.
One TFS crew member was treated for smoke inhalation. By morning, there was a trail of destruction. Electricity poles stood no chance in the heat. Property razed to the ground. The structure turned into a twisted wreck.
We have lost 2 houses, 1 shed and 1 vehicle, and further investigations are continuing.
Firefighters working hard on the ground as conditions settled. Support also came from the sky.
It's been an outstanding effort from our first responders.
An evacuation centre was set up at Swansea Town Hall. By lunchtime, some residents were allowed back in. However, this afternoon, the threat returned. Strong winds fueling another outbreak. The emergency warning reinstated, with the Dolphin Sands road closure extended. As of this afternoon, 224 hectares had been destroyed. A cause has yet to be determined. It's the second time in 2 months East Coast residents have dealt with a bushfire. With summer still a fortnight away, authorities say this incident should serve as a reminder that fire can strike at any time.
Nearly 90% of Tasmania is bushfire prone.
Reminder for all Tasmanians to ensure that they are prepared for bushfire. It wasn't extreme or even high fire danger ratings occurring on the east coast. It was a wind-driven event.
John Hunt, 7 Tasmania News.
A Tasmanian police officer has been removed from frontline duties after being charged with assault. Reporter John Hunt joins us with the details. John, what can you tell us?
Kim, details are limited, but the 38-year-old male officer has been summoned to appear on 1 count of common assault. The offence is alleged to have occurred in Moona in May, while the officer was on duty. Tasmania Police say the officer, who is from the Southern District, has been placed into a non-operational posting. He will appear in the Magistrates Court in February. Kim?
The death of a Rosetta man who lost control of his wheelchair on a gravel track is sparking fresh scrutiny of accessible taxis. A coroner calling for increased availability to avoid a repeat, saying Robert East wouldn't have died if a taxi had arrived on time to collect him.
For most of us, finding a lift home is as simple as tapping a phone screen, but that's far from reality for those with a disability.
Their options for transport are highly limited. And that's even more prevalent for people who may be living in remote rural areas of Tasmania as well.
In March last year, Rosetta man Robert East died after a lengthy delay waiting for a taxi. The double amputee, who relied on an electric wheelchair, decided to make his own way home last year after being told it would be a 2-hour wait. He lost control on a gravel path and crashed into a ditch, dying in hospital from head injuries 2 days later.
It's one of the things that we've been concerned about for a really long time, that the problems that we've been experiencing with wheelchair taxis should come to something like this.
Coroner Olivia McTaggart found he wouldn't have died if a wheelchair-accessible taxi had arrived to collect him during the 45 minutes he waited.
The services in the past have been inadequate. This government has completely rewritten the regulations and the funding model to provide an incentive for more wheelchair-accessible taxis.
But disability advocates are yet to notice any improvement.
I'm still hearing reports of people waiting upwards of 2 or 3 hours for wheelchair taxis, so I'm not aware that there have been significant improvements.
Transport difficulties aren't confined to taxis or to people in wheelchairs.
I, as a guide dog user, often get refused by taxi and rideshare drivers who don't want to take the guide dog.
Advocates are now calling for a broad review. A number of taxi industry stakeholders were contacted for comment. Nick Kelly, 7 Tasmania News.
They hear from Tasmanians in times of crisis, but now the police want to hear your feedback. For the first time, the service is launching a feedback survey to learn about the public's experiences with police and what residents expect from law enforcement in the future.
Each community is different, so we get an opportunity to hear directly from those local communities. We can then ensure the resourcing model is appropriate, and we've got the right strategies in place to ensure that we're keeping those communities safe.
The survey is open for 3 weeks. Visit police.tas.gov.au/survey. CSIRO scientists and researchers are preparing to head deep into the Southern Ocean in an attempt to protect Antarctica. Using new satellite technology, they'll gain vital information about the effects of heat leaking from ocean currents.
36 days worth of food and supplies are being loaded onto the RV Investigator. Final preparations for a major trip south.
Underneath the surface, there's all this vertical movement of heat and carbon that's taking heat from the atmosphere and putting it in the ocean.
The CSIRO research vessel leaves Hobart Wednesday, headed into the Southern Ocean. Scientists are hoping for insights into how gaps in currents contribute to ice shelves melting.
A very worrying effect is if you get this warm water towards Antarctica, it starts to melt the glaciers, and then we have runaway of ice melting into the ocean and rising the sea level.
The team is using a special ocean satellite to search 5 eddies believed to be leaking heat, taking some of the highest resolution images of the ocean topography to date.
The satellite gives us the surface patterns, and what we're seeing is the changing height of the sea surface and the gradients across that drives the horizontal currents.
The current, named the Antarctic Circumpolar, acts as a protective dam to keep Antarctica cold and warmer waters out. It's hoped information from this trip will prompt urgent answers.
Higher topography means it's an anticyclone, and lower topography it's a cyclone. And one is driving cold and the other warm.
This incredible reduction in the sea ice was way outside the bounds of what we might have expected, and so there are surprises in the climate system that we're just not prepared for.
Joining the race against time to stop climate change in its tracks. Ruby Cairns, 7 Tasmania News.
Tasmanians are urged to share their views on 6 potential new ferry services and routes across the River Derwent in an effort to ease traffic congestion and create more public transport options. A draft master plan identifies sites at Lindisfarne, Howrah, Sandy Bay, Regatta Point, Wilkinson's Point and Kingston Beach to keep more cars off our roads.
We'd like to see a stitched service in the interpeak periods where you'll actually have ferry services crisscrossing the river, going to different locations.
The Greater Hobart Mayor's released a joint statement urging action and funding to be locked in. Well, Santa's elves are hard at work helping Launceston get into the festive spirit. The decorations are being dusted off and the lights are being hung, turning the CBD into a Christmas wonderland. The iconic tree in the Brisbane Street Mall has undergone a major facelift.
Putting the same base up, but revamping the entire facade. So new foliage, new lighting, new baubles, new everything.
To have listened to the community and to be absolutely at the forefront and to looking forward to that a bigger Christmas than you've ever seen before here in Launceston.
The Elves have their work cut out for them ahead of the official lighting of the tree next Friday night. 35 theatre groups have converged on Hobart for the Performing Arts Summit. The sector's best and brightest working together to brainstorm ideas for future collaborations.
There's a traditional idea of that passive audience. I make a show, you sit there and watch it. But the arts are so much more than that. And we've got to figure out how to continue to communicate that.
Performers and producers from around the state have taken part. Well, pet owners are being put on notice ahead of summer not to leave animals in cars. The RSPCA and RACT are joining forces to warn of the potentially deadly dangers as the weather heats up.
The summer safety message is back.
Please leave your dogs at home this summer. It takes a dog only 6 minutes to die in a hot car.
The RSPCA and RACT are taking the lead, hoping to avoid a devastating outcome as temperatures rise.
Pets and animals are really susceptible to high temperatures, and tragic outcomes can occur very, very quickly.
We know dogs love cars, there's no doubt about it. It might mean a trip to the beach or a trip to the dog park, but please don't stop in and do errands on the way home.
Willing to lend a hand to anyone who accidentally locks their pet in the car, the RACT is offering free assistance to all Tasmanians in that scenario.
It doesn't matter if you're a member with RACT or not, please call us.
Making their message loud and clear and hoping they see less call-outs after troubling numbers last financial year.
It is concerning that almost 100 times that our roadside assistance teams have been asked to respond to dogs left in vehicles.
Have a heart for the people who are near your car watching your dog in distress, because for those people, those few minutes, they just pass so slowly.
With a reminder to keep a lookout for our animal friends at all times.
Ensuring that a dog has water, it's got access to shade. Now make sure that shade is actually cool.
Keeping our furry family members front of mind. Victoria Eastoe, 7 Tasmania News.
Well, those looking for a laugh have somewhere to turn next March with the Hanging Garden Precinct to host the Hobart Comedy Festival. Ursula Carlson and Heath Franklin's Chopper headline 11 shows over 3 days at Alta and the Odeon Theatre. Tickets go on sale later this week. Meanwhile, preparations for a different kind of comedy show are in the works. The final touches are being put on the 20th Bawdy Panto performance ahead of Wednesday's opening night. This year's theme, Hansel and Regrettal, will mock the big events that shaped our state this year.
Lots of laughs, lots of very bad puns. The meat tray auction in the middle of the show, we always stop the show and auction off a meat tray, which goes for around about $500.
All money raised will be donated to MS Research at the Menzies Centre.
The Hurricanes are currently seeking revenge for Friday's loss against the Sydney Sixers. Choosing to bat first, they haven't been holding back, Briony Smith knocking a 4 on her very first ball. A short time ago, the women were 1 for 43 after 6 overs. A racing legend has given his final bow with a podium finish at Bathurst. Devonport's John Bowe running his penultimate Touring Cars Masters race and final race in Bathurst. Pulling off the pass of the year to snavel third in a sprint finish, the veteran hinting his racing career might not be totally over.
Everybody that supported me, I've had signs around the track and everything's just that's lovely, honestly. I'll be back in something, but not TCM.
His final TCM race is in Adelaide in a fortnight. Also finding success at Mount Panorama on the weekend is Launceston's Lockie Dalton, fighting back from a first lap bingle in the Trans Am to find 6th place under safety car conditions when the action-packed race ended prematurely. He finishes the season 2nd overall. And the Tasmania Tritons have travelled to Queensland for this year's Bowls Premier League. Day 1 getting underway in the Pine Rivers this afternoon. The Tritons couldn't make up lost ground against the Moama Steamers, that match ending in a loss a short time ago. Luckily, Kim, they have the rest of the week to make good.
OK, we wish them well. Thank you very much, Nick.
Good evening. Well, first up, I better thank Kaya for stepping up to the breach and looking after the weather for the last 3 weeks. Not that she took much convincing. We'll be seeing plenty more of her pretty soon too. Hobart reached the top of 22 today. Launceston and Burnie 21. Devonport a maximum of 18 degrees. 25 was the warmest at Fingal and St Helens as temperatures in the east rose to 4 degrees above average. Campania 22. Friendly Beaches and Bushy Park 21. Grove 19 today. Lyawini, after recording our low of -2, reached 18 this afternoon. Flinders Island and Low Head 17, King Island 16, Strawn just a top of 15. Westerly winds pushed the cloud over western Tasmania today. Clear skies over most of the rest of the state. Areas of thunderstorm activity hovered over central Australia and southwest WA. Onshore winds produced cloud over coastal New South Wales. Tomorrow, a cold front brushes southern Tasmania with a trough developing over the northeast of the state. More troughs over the mainland. Here are the wind directions. West-southwesterly winds at 15 to 25 knots, but to 30 knots over southern waters tomorrow, along with a 6-metre swell. We have a strong wind warning that's been issued for waters between Stanley and Eddystone Point, and also from Wineglass Bay down and around to Low Rocky Point. Hobart tomorrow, cloudy and a top of 17 degrees, 16 for Adventure Bay, 50% chance of a shower for Tarraleah, 15 the maximum. Launceston a high of 23 and mostly sunny, 21 the top for Devonport and also Bridport. Burnie expecting a high of 19 and partly cloudy. The chance of a shower for Strawn, 15, partly cloudy for Marrawar, 16 the high, and for St Helens, 19 with a shower or two, but partly cloudy for Swansea and Whitemark, 18 degrees. On Wednesday, a possible isolated shower over the east, fine for the rest of the state until showers develop in the west later. A cool day in the west and south on Thursday, along with a shower, cloudy conditions for the rest of the state. And on Friday, showers over the west, partly cloudy but mostly fine elsewhere. A sunny start in Perth ahead of a storm later, a morning shower for Adelaide. Cool and cloudy in Melbourne, a sunny 26 for Sydney, partly cloudy but 30 the top in Brisbane. Still sunny conditions at the moment, 16 in Hobart, 19 in Launceston, 17 in Devonport. And Kim, thanks for having me back. Actually, on my travels, I visited the house that I grew up in. So I thought, I'd knock on the door to see if I can have a look around for old time's sake, but my parents wouldn't let me in.
The jokes haven't improved while you've been away. Thanks, Merv. Good to have you back. And that is all your news for now. Thanks for joining us tonight. Good night, everyone.